the FBI agents who are the target of the Department of Justice and Trump, specifically those who were involved in January 6th and the Mar-a-Lago investigations, are fighting back. In fact, they have filed 2 lawsuits. One of them is a class action lawsuit. The other one is filed by the Federal Bureau Agents Association. My name is Dina Sayegh Doll with the Legal AF channel. Let's break this down. Now, with the class action lawsuits, it's filed by anonymous FBI agents, Jane Doe 1 through 9, and they are suing specifically the Department of Justice because of the list the Department of Justice has requested that the FBI upper echelon generate. They asked them to generate a list of all the officers, all the agents who worked on the investigations related to January 6th and Mar-a-Lago, with the intent that these agents then get fired and get the wrath of MAGA. In the second lawsuit, the Federal Bureau Agents Association is suing the Department of Justice and the United States government. So this is where we're at. The Federal Agents Association, they represent the vast majority of FBI agents in this country. Specifically, they have as their members 12,000 out of the 13,800 current FBI agents. And they are suing the United States government under this Trump MAGA. This is how lawless the Trump MAGA administration already is, how dangerous and unsafe they are already making us, that the FBI Association, the FBI agents are in fear for their privacy, for their jobs, distracted. There's a lot of things that they need to be focusing on and not defending themselves against this target. So in terms of the first lawsuit, the ones that is the class action, they are specifically alleging that this list that the Department of Justice is requiring them to generate violates their constitutional rights in a few ways. It violates their First Amendment rights because it is targeting them for their political beliefs, because Trump is saying that because they were on January 6th and Mar-a-Lago, then they cannot work essentially for him, because that's how he sees the FBI, because it showed their politics were not aligned with him, because they were going after the January 6th, which he was the head of, and Mar-a-Lago, which was him. That is essentially what it is that Trump is doing. Trump's not even pretending anymore that January 6th wasn't about him, right? He pardoned his army, and now he's saying, if you dare to go after my army, then you can't work in the FBI while I'm president because you are not aligned enough with my political beliefs. Never mind the fact that the FBI agents who worked on this had nothing to do with their political beliefs. Some were, in fact, FBI, Republican or conservative, and did it just because it was their job. Setting that side, whether or not they believed it or didn't believe it, they carried out their duties as they are required to do by their job. And now they are being targeted because they are not, their purity test, let's say. They do not meet this purity test to work while Trump is president, even though the FBI doesn't work for Trump, but, that ship has sailed. Trump is making the FBI basically his personal department. So that's their first allegation, that you are violating my First Amendment rights because even if me working this case showed a political belief, you cannot fire me for my political belief. An FBI agent can post whatever they want about their political beliefs and not be fired about it because they have a constitutional right to not be fired by the government for their political beliefs. And then they're also saying that this is a violation of their due process rights, that they cannot be fired because of this fact that they worked on a case or 2 cases, if it was Mar-a-Lago and January 6th, that now Trump doesn't like, that this is a violation of their due process rights. And then they also say that the generation of the list is a violation of the Privacy Act of 1974. We're going to be hearing about this act a lot. In fact, we're going to be hearing about a lot of laws that we had never heard about before, such as the Administration Procedure Act that governs how agency works, and now this Privacy Act of 1974, these acts that quietly kept officials and the government running functionally. And now Trump is testing literally every single law in the books. And so they're saying under this Privacy Act, we have a right to privacy, and you are going to be taking this information, all of our names and addresses, any information about us, and you're handing it over to the Department of Justice. And they cite Elon Musk and how Elon Musk is gaining access to the payment system as a way of saying that these agencies cannot be trusted with this information because they're already giving this private payment information, access to this private information, access to Elon Musk. We don't trust what you're going to do with this list. We don't trust that this list is going to be circulated by MAGA. And so this is a Privacy Act violation. Essentially, you should not have our privacy. You should not have our private information, and you have been shown to not be trusted with private information because you just hand it over to Elon Musk, who is not even a government official. So that is that first lawsuit. Now, the two lawsuits have now been combined into one lawsuit. This is a common thing that happens when the underlying issues are the same. For efficiency, those lawsuits are often combined because you would have the same witnesses, the same evidence, etc. But interestingly enough, the second lawsuit that's brought by the association really goes into why the privacy, the harm, because the first lawsuit does, mentions that the families could be harmed, that there's a real risk if this information goes out there. And the second lawsuit drills down on that in a really disturbing and alarming way. And I'm just going to read a little bit from that because we should all really realize what is at stake for these FBI agents who put their life on the line and, do the best they can, even if not always perfectly, to defend our laws in the United States. And they in this complaint, they go ahead, copy and paste a post by Enrique Tarrio, who we know is the head of the Proud Boys, who was sentenced to 22 years in prison for his involvement in January 6th, got a full pardon from Trump. And he was specifically seeking the retaliation against the FBI in his post and they just go ahead and they quote this. And so I'm going to quote from the litigation. They said, Enrique Tarrio has been recently released from federal custody and has openly expressed his intent to seek retaliation against the FBI. In his ex-bio line, he claims to be the, quote, United States Secretary of Retaliation. End quote. They go on to say, Mr. Tarrio has also threatened that, quote, the people who did this, they need to feel the heat. They need to be put behind bars and they need to be prosecuted. Success is going to be retribution. So this is, again, this is what the FBI Association is saying to the court, that if you are going to get this list and if you're going to pass out information that's personal and you are literally going to be putting these FBI agents and their families in harm's way because they are openly talking about a retribution to these FBI agents. And the litigation goes on to say, quote, as of the date of this affidavit, multiple hashtags are trending on X that allow January 6 convicts turned pardons to link to each other in posts promoting violence and insurrection against law enforcement agents. For example, the below user Steve, whose bio claims he was a J6 attendee, reposted the following post from another January 6 convict turned pardon recipient, which apparently depicts Mr. Quaglin's FBI interview subsequent to his arrest in 2021. And he recaptioned his repost, this FBIer better have filled out that survey today asking about his J6 prosecution involvement. So, here they're tying it. They're saying this is not some vague, like we're worried about this happening in the future. They are literally asking for them to have filled out this survey. This is what this survey is going to be used for. It is going to be used for retribution. It is going to be putting these men and women who were trying to work, just do their job and their families in harm's way. This is not theoretical. We are showing you with these posts, they mean business. And so this is why the FBI Association, again, that represents almost all of the current FBI agents suing the United States government, in addition to the Department of Justice, taking this very seriously to try to keep their agents safe. And we are talking about, potentially 6,000 FBI agents that may be involved in this survey, this retribution. And we are seeing in real time this rapidly developing story where the agents filing their own class action, the association filing a lawsuit on behalf of their members, trying to put a stop to what is happening in plain sight, which is the attacking retribution of the FBI agents who were just trying to do their job. My name is Dina Sayegh Doll with the Legal AF channel. Be sure to subscribe. We will be updating as these developments come about.
In collaboration with the Midas Touch Network, we just launched the Legal AF YouTube channel. Help us build this pro-democracy channel where I'll be curating the top stories at the intersection of law and politics. Go to YouTube now and free subscribe at Legal AF MTN. That's at Legal AF MTN.